Hi, I'm Clever Ghoul, but you can call me Nikki. And this week, we're turning this little planter into my cat. Last time when I was at Target, when I was getting the little cart for last week's video, I found this little gal. It's a little planter. She even has drainage, which is hard to see. There you go, there's a little drainage hole, so you can actually use this as a planter. Of course, I could just leave it how it is, or I could turn it into my cat Birdie, who I'm obsessed with. And that's definitely gonna have to happen. This is gonna be Birdie. So like I said, you can get this in the dollar section at Target. I think it was $5. Yeah, it was $5 in the dollar section. I think they also have dog ones, but you know, it looks like I think it's a dachshund. I can't remember. But you know, that's the good thing about cats is that you can really just have any cat shape and turn it into your cat. So yeah, we're turning this into Birdie. Will she appreciate it? Absolutely not. Will she even know what's going on? Definitely not. Will she potentially maybe knock it over and break it? Of course. Welcome to having cats. So basically what I have planned is I'm going to prime this with spray paint. I have a gray spray paint primer, and then I'm gonna let that dry, and then we're going to just paint her markings in acrylic paint, paint her eyes, her nose, all her little details. I'm gonna go outside and spray this, and I'm not gonna film that. It's literally, that's what it'll look like. So I'll see you when we're actually painting the details. Let's get into it.
Here's what the planter looks like after I primed it. If you decide to do this project, make sure that your spray paint primer and sealer are both compatible with whatever paint you use. Since I'm using acrylic paint, which is water-based, I made sure to use acrylic primer and sealer. You don't want to accidentally use an oil-based spray and then put a water-based paint over it. If you do that, the paint will peel off. Like other animal fur, Birdie's coat has a lot of colors and tones in it.
Are you helping?
Painting every single detail would take an excessive amount of time, but I still wanted to add in some depth. To do that, I mixed up some dark gray, light gray, and honey brown paint and applied it with a sponge brush to add texture. This layer would act as a sort of base tone, mimicking the warm gray color present in Birdie's fur. Once the base layer was dry, I wanted to add in the light gray tips that you can see present in her fur. I mixed a little bit of dark gray into some light gray paint, and then using a dry brush, pressed the paint into the planter. I did this all over, again to add depth and texture. Next, I flipped the planter over and using a sponge brush, added in some more of that light gray paint I had just used previously. After the light gray, I wanted to start adding in some of the tan tones that are present in multiple places in Birdie's coat. I started with the tummy, using a sponge, and once dry, I flipped the planter over and started adding the color onto the nose and muzzle. Then I went to where the sides and bottom of the planter meet and pushed a little more of the paint into those areas. Once that was dry, I flipped the planter over and decided to do some more work on the tummy. I mixed white and honey brown until I created an off-white base, loaded up my brush, wiped off any excess paint, and then brushed on the color, creating a slightly weathered finish. After that was dry, I mixed more honey brown into the off-white color and painted using the same method I had previously, focusing on the outer edges of the tummy area. I blotted the area using my fingers to help marry the two colors together. I knew that same color I just mixed also needed to be added to the face, so I flipped over the planter and lightly started adding it in. I made sure the brush had very little paint on it, careful not to deposit too much at once. Next, I decided it was time to start working on the facial details. I started by adding in her lightest markings with light gray. I was scared to fully start with off-white, and since she has light gray near those areas, I decided mapping it out this way and adding in the white later was a better move. After working the light gray into her face, I also added it around her neck and legs. When the light gray dried, I started adding in the off-white color on top, starting around her eyes and then moving around her head, neck, chest, and ears. I decided to take a break from all of the neutral tones and add in Birdie's beautiful green eyes. I started by adding in a lime green layer and letting that set. While that dried, I touched up some of the white areas. It was here that I realized how far apart the eyes on the planter were as compared to Birdie's face in real life. Next, I mixed some of the lime green with a touch of honey brown and then carefully added that into the middle of the eyes. After the eyes, I moved on to the nose. I mixed a little bit of burgundy and honey brown together until I got just the right hue and painted it on. I wanted to add in the darker colors around the nose next, so I mixed dark gray and brown together and started outlining and shading the nose area before working my way down the muzzle. I continued working all around the face, neck, and chest areas. Once the base of the head and legs were dry, I started to add in the black details of her fur and eyes. Now it was time to work on the back of the head and body. I started by painting on her stripes and shading in the back of the ears. Birdie is darkest along her back, so as a nod to that, I painted the opening edge of the planter black. Let's add in her body details. Starting on the right-hand side, I did my best to match Birdie's spots and stripes. Most of her markings are black in the center and dark gray on the outer edges, so I started by painting them all in dark gray. Once dry, I added the black paint on top of the markings I had just made before adding in more black around the opening and upper side area of the planter. The tail was next, and I worked on it the same way I had on the right side of the planter, dark gray first and then black on top. Eventually, I worked my way to the left side of the planter to repeat the previous process. This is when I realized that Birdie has more solid stripes on her right side and more dotted lines and spots on her left side. I probably would have never known that had I not started this project. But also, how have I never noticed? Finally, I added her black back feet and some other details that you'll just have to see in the reveal. I had so much fun doing this project, and I love how it turned out. I also added in her perfect tummy spots, and because I have a 13-year-old sense of humor, I added a little twinkle tush. If you're not sure what that is, Google it. Do you have a pet? Tell me about them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to follow me on TikTok and Instagram at cleverghoul.yt. See you next week.